Connecticut just banned some of the most popular handguns, and a massive lawsuit is coming. Connecticut just passed a law that could ban the future sale of some of the most popular handguns in America. And now the firearm industry says it's preparing a constitutional challenge. Because according to supporters, this law is about stopping illegal machine gun conversions, but according to critics, Connecticut didn't ban criminals, Connecticut banned guns. They banned the guns that criminals might illegally modify, which is apparently the legislative equivalent of banning cars because somebody might speed. So what exactly did Connecticut do? Why is the NSSF preparing for a court fight? And could this become the next major Second Amendment case? Let's break it down. Governor Ned Lamont recently signed House Bill 5043 into law. The legislation targets what Connecticut calls convertible pistols. They just keep making this crap up. The law takes effect on October the 1st of this year. Under the bill, Connecticut will prohibit the importation and sale of certain semi-automatic pistols that lawmakers believe can readily be converted into machine guns through the installation of illegal conversion devices commonly known as Glock switches. And before you ask, no, the switch itself isn't legal. Federal law already treats these conversion devices as machine guns. What the crap is a convertible pistol? Possessing one can carry severe federal penalties. Making one is illegal, selling one is illegal, importing one is illegal, attaching one to a handgun is illegal. So in other words, the thing that Connecticut says it's trying to stop is already highly illegal. It's like, stupid. So what is a convertible pistol? This crap they just keep making up. Here's where things are getting interesting. The law defines a convertible pistol as a semi-automatic handgun with what's called a cruciform trigger bar that can be altered by hand or with common household tools so that a conversion device can turn it into a machine gun. The legislation specifically focuses on pistols using that trigger system. While the bill never says Glock by name, everyone involved already knows exactly what handgun design lawmakers are talking about, because striker-fired pistols that use this type of system are among the most popular handguns in America. That includes firearms that are commonly chosen for self-defense and home protection, competitive shooting, law enforcement use. Yeah, law enforcement. You're banning the guns that law enforcement uses. And everyday concealed carry. Some critics argue Connecticut didn't just target a niche firearm, it targeted an entire category of commonly owned firearms. You know, the kind of firearms millions of Americans have. Now, Connecticut officials say the law is necessary because illegal machine gun conversion devices have become increasingly common. Governor Lamont's office pointed to ATF statistics showing tens of thousands of machine gun conversion devices have been recovered nationwide. State officials also cited reports from Hartford police involving the seizure of Glock switches. Okay, yeah, those are illegal. Their argument is simple. If a firearm can be easily converted into a machine gun, manufacturers should redesign the firearm so it can't be. Supporters say the law creates a safety standard rather than a gun ban. No, bullcrap. And that's likely to be a major argument when this inevitably reaches federal court, because it's going to. We're not buying the explanation. The firearm industry is not buying the explanation. The NSSF, the Firearms Industry Trade Association, announced that it intends to challenge the law, and according to the NSSF, Connecticut is banning constitutionally protected handguns that are overwhelmingly used for lawful purposes. The organization argues that criminals are already violating multiple state and federal laws when they possess or install machine gun conversion devices. So instead of targeting the criminal conduct, Connecticut targeted the firearm itself. Makes no sense. NSSF Senior Vice President and General Counsel Lawrence King blasted the legislation, arguing that it punishes the law-abiding citizens while doing little to deter criminals. His position is straightforward. The problem is the criminal, not the handgun. Why is it always the law-abiding citizens that pay for the crimes of the criminal? Now here's where things get really important. Ever since the Supreme Court decided the landmark case of District of Columbia versus Heller, courts have repeatedly acknowledged that firearms in common use for lawful purposes receive constitutional protection. And that's exactly where this fight is headed. Opponents of the Connecticut law are expected to argue that striker-fired handguns are among the most commonly owned firearms in America. And they are. Tell me one person, even if you don't care for the Glocks, most people have it. So if that's true, and it is, can a state prohibit future sales of those firearms simply because criminals might illegally modify them? That's a constitutional question, and it's a big one. And it's not the only state. What's even more interesting is that Connecticut didn't come up with this idea on its own. The law was modeled after a similar California measure, and that California law is already facing legal challenges from gun rights organizations of its own. So Connecticut may have just volunteered itself as the next battleground in a growing national fight over handgun restrictions. If multiple states adopt similar laws, federal courts could eventually be forced to decide whether these bans are constitutional nationwide. And I'll just tell you right now, they're not. What part of shall not be infringed do you not understand? The Supreme Court has already ruled on this. For now, the law doesn't create a statewide confiscation program. Existing owners generally aren't being ordered to surrender their firearms. Instead, the law focuses primarily on future sales and importation of firearms that meet the state's definition of convertible pistol. But critics argue that today's sales ban often becomes tomorrow's possession fight. And if you've followed gun politics for more than 5 minutes, you've probably heard that concern before. Meanwhile, supporters say the measure is simply a reasonable effort to prevent machine gun conversions before they happen. Stop selling alcohol before somebody gets drunk and goes and kills somebody in a car. Same logic. So both sides are framing this as a public safety issue. They're just disagreeing on what actually improves public safety. So one thing is certain. This fight's not going to be over anytime soon. There's going to be tons of lawsuits. Connecticut has officially enacted the law. The NSSF says a challenge is coming, and federal judges may soon have to answer a question with consequences far beyond Connecticut. Can the government ban an entire category of commonly owned handguns because criminals might illegally modify them? Criminals do what criminals do. Or does the Second Amendment prevent states from restricting firearms that millions of Americans lawfully own and use every single day? We will be watching this closely because what happens next could have implications far beyond just Connecticut's borders itself. If you want updates on this lawsuit, future court filings, and major Second Amendment cases as they develop, please make sure that you do subscribe and let me know in the comments, do you think Connecticut targeted criminals or target law-abiding gun owners? Do you believe that this is just another way through a back door to take handguns out of law-abiding citizens that affect law-abiding citizens but not the criminals themselves, as almost all of these laws always do? Again, it's always the law-abiding citizens that pay the price for the crimes of the criminal.